Hello everyone, and welcome to our final week's video. With this being the final week, of course, we're going to focus on a variety of different areas, but during this final week, I wanted to focus primarily on, as the title slide shows, investors and the investment process. Now, the primary thing that we're going to look at during this presentation is going to be the different classifications of objectives that we have based on the type of investor that we find ourselves dealing with. So this is going to take on three main forms. We're going to have the individual, the professional, and the objectives from the viewpoint of the bank. So without further ado, let us go ahead and get started. Typically with the individual investor, we see a defined set of objectives that align itself well with the individual. This is primarily represented in the balance of the risk and return relationship throughout the life of the investor. Most investors are going to be risk averse, meaning that given the same opportunity for return, they will choose the lower investment. Wealth, as it is invested from the individual, is going to shift from human capital to financial capital as age continues to increase. Also, the increasing portfolio choice of importance is going to increase, meaning that the life cycle is going to play a critical role in defining as well as determining the risk-return trade-off. Typically, what we see is we have younger investors that are willing to bear more risk for higher returns, and we're going to have, conversely, older investors that are more willing to accept lower returns for lower risk. And this isn't so much tied to age as it is tied to retirement. So as the retirement horizon approaches and continues to approach, we have typically lower amounts of risk being taken on. Also, changing gears slightly, even though professional investors have similar objectives from that of the professional, and sometimes the lines can be blurred somewhat between moving from the professional to the individual. Professional investors will commonly use things such as personal trusts and mutual funds. With the personal trust, the trustee is going to hold an interest in an asset for the benefit of another person. Management of this would be subject to specified investor rules associated with that particular trust. Similarly, we also have mutual funds, which the objective of that particular fund will vary based on the type of fund, which all of this would be spelled out explicitly in that particular fund's prospectus. In the prospectus also would be historical returns, the objective of the firm, as well as any fees associated with the firm. Also, in the category of professional investors would be the two primary types of mutual funds and pension funds that we have. Pension funds are going to fall into two primary categories, that of the defined benefit and the defined contribution. The defined benefit is going to depend on the tenure and the salary of the employee, and with this, the risk is going to be borne solely by the company. With the defined contribution, on the other hand, the employee and the employer will contribute a set amount to the individual's retirement fund. The benefit will depend primarily on the investment performance, and with this particular scenario, the investment risk is taken on by that of the individual as opposed to the firm in the previous example. Other classifications that fall within the purview of the professional investor are endowment funds. These are typically used as vehicles to move gifts to nonprofits from the professional to the nonprofit that are then invested. These funds from the endowment are then used by the nonprofit organization for the betterment of the organization. These are ways that professional investors can protect themselves and limit their tax liability as appropriate. The last classification of investor objectives that we have to discuss is that of the bank. The bank is worth denoting that these objectives will differ considerably from that of the professional and individual. The sources of funds for the bank is going to be found predominantly in deposits, some in borrowed funds. The investment of the funds are going to be found predominantly in loans and fixed income securities, whereas the active and securitized loans and asset markets are going to be particular of that of the bank, whereas this isn't going to be necessarily found when dealing with the particular investor. Banks are also important to denote that they are not active in equity except in a trust function. So this helps to isolate them from those types of risks that are taken on. So I hope this has been helpful in illustrating some of the various aspects of investor objectives that there are, as the objectives that are associated with an investor will in large part drive the investment decisions that then must be made. So keep that in mind as you're working through the final week of the course. I hope that everyone has a great remainder of the course, and it has truly been a pleasure to work with each and every one of you. Thank you.